So I'm down at the garden and the big compost bins here. We're talking about going down to the beach to get some seaweed. What I'm gonna do first is put some shredded cardboard in there because that's kind of my experiment. Do a little bit of seaweed, a little bit of shredded cardboard, a little bit of seaweed. Oakley dokley, folkley. Hey folks, it's 8 o'clock and there's a truck behind me, which you can't see, full of seaweed. I'm gonna shovel it into the composting bins. Hey folks, it's 9:30 and I'm done with the seaweed. Okay, so I filled up this bin. He's 3 feet full and then added some to this little guy. And he's about 2 feet full. And just in time to do a nice seaweed run because now we got some rain snow going on. Hey there! So I was extra good this week and I sat down and systematically went through all the notes in my Lazy Gardener app, whatever the ones I took before I stopped taking them, and put it all into my little spreadsheet here and kind of filled in some gaps. So actually that really helped a lot to identify some things that I thought were just approximate dates. I actually had actual dates for when I started things and stuff. And and then I also went through systematically and watched all of my videos up until the May ones. I'll keep watching those and filling in stuff into this spreadsheet. But what I really wanted to look at was, get some idea of when I could start things this next season. So I was looking at spring stuff, and it actually really helped to have those videos. Thank goodness, I mentioned a lot of the times what the temperatures were at night and during the day, and I even recorded. I used to look back and kind of what in the world am I putting this stuff in my videos? But I would have a forecast for the next week and stuff. I would actually put the forecast in the video. But that stuff really, really helped. And so I actually have some start dates for direct seeding and for when I want to start some transplants and stuff. And I don't think it's gonna be perfect, but I think I got a better handle on things than I was feeling like I was gonna be able to do last week. Oh yeah, in addition to the temperatures, I also would show, how the garden was being shaded and stuff like that. So I know when the sun was coming up over the trees at the south, from the south end of our property, where there's trees that are, some of them are neighbors' trees and some of them are ours, and they're not going to get cut down. So that's kind of something I can't change. But then I was also looking at some of the shading from the trees on our property coming from the southwest or the west, where the sun starts going setting. Those trees, some of those can come down. They're on our property and they were shading the garden. So that was good to see. And I also documented when the soil was frozen, when it was still frozen in the greenhouse and finally thawed. And also there was a time where at the south end of the garden, it was frozen on the south end, but it was actually thawed in the north end where the sun had been kind of hitting. So that was cool to see. That reminded me, last year was a little bit of a weird year. This is what we kind of get typically here. Sometimes we'll get some temperatures in March, some weather in March that is kind of nice, and you think, oh man, I should have had everything started, I should have put everything out, everything could have been just fine because there's sun and temperatures kind of warmed up into the 50s during the day, and they're above freezing at night, and isn't this great? And then April will come along and it'll be super cold during the day, just in the 40s during the day, and then even hitting freezing temperatures at night. And so then that's what I was seeing. I had planted stuff out, I had started starts, and then everything was just wasn't growing. So what happened this last year was actually we had record temperatures in March. It wasn't even just a kind of a nice March. We had where it was almost 70 degrees in the shade outside. That is unheard of here. And so that was just really weird. And I actually had problems with stuff in the greenhouse. It was too hot to be in the greenhouse. And I didn't have the ability to really vent the whole thing. I just had these little flappy things to open up, one door on one end to open up and a flap to open up at the other end. So I would never have expected that was a problem. And so then Then April got really cold, and I felt like it was colder than in years past. It was a pretty cold April. So anyway, that's kind of the patterns that happen here. And so that's what I'm kind of working with here. I'm working with, okay, in March. It wasn't till the very end of March that nighttime temperatures got above the 20s. So we were in the, mid 20s at night at the very end of March. It wasn't until like the last week that it kind of started popping up above freezing. It really wasn't until May, the very beginning of May, that things started warming up, that we actually started getting some days in the 60s, and that nights were pretty typically above freezing. We actually got a frost the first week of May, but at night, but that was kind of it. And so the first week of May was pretty safe. And I would say that that's probably where a lot of people around here actually start, they don't want to get tempted to plant things, and they actually only start getting serious about doing stuff at the beginning of May. And we have some friends that live down in Myers Chuck, and they don't even bother until starting stuff then, because of temperature, and also because the migrating birds come through here and they can just rip seeds out of the ground and cause all sorts of problems. Okay, so I've got things planned out here in my spreadsheet, and it says that basil and cucumbers are going to be the only thing that I start in the house. Last year, I had kind of this little makeshift nursery on the ground where it was really too cold, but I didn't have any other place, so I'm hoping to build a little nursery where I can get the plants up higher so that it's actually a little bit warmer, and have them under lights. And so it says here, start basil and cucumbers inside under grow lights on high shelf first week of April, with target to be ready to plant out in greenhouse no earlier than the first or second week of May, because I'm getting freezing temperatures out there so at night. So last season it was taking like 6 to 7 weeks for the basil to grow big enough that they could be transplanted out. But again, part of my problem was that it was just like the varying temperatures, and it was just too cold. And so I had basil growing, and then like a couple weeks later having more basil germinate. And so hopefully I get more of a uniform germination. I'm also hoping to get a germination chamber put together before everything starts, so that I can actually just get everything to germinate uniformly. Because last season was the worst I've ever experienced as far as like spotty germination or irregular germination. And so then as far as transplants, like lettuce, kale, my mature chard, herbs, green onions, leeks, sugar snap peas. And so it says start lettuce and the other things in the greenhouse in containers and elevated no earlier than the last week of March, because otherwise it was like temperatures in the 20s at night. But be prepared to vent or move the trays outside during the day in March if the temperatures get too high like they did last year, with a target to transplant out into the garden the last week of April under row cover. Not only for the temperatures that are low at night, but because of the migrating birds that might be coming through. But my whole plan for this is that I want to use natural temperature and light to start these. I've always done that before in the past, and in the future maybe I'll change that and try and get things started earlier here and get stuff planted out. But because that's what Farragut Farm does. They say they start things kind of usually maybe at the end of February, but they have a little tiny heated greenhouse that they start things in. All the rest of their greenhouses are not heated, but this one is where they start stuff, is heated. And they also have a big open southern exposure where they don't have a bunch of trees and stuff like that, so they're getting plenty of light, or as much light at that time of year as we can get. And so I'm not going to be able to do the same things that they do. And so, but I may push things a little bit in the future and try to get things started a little bit earlier, but not this year. Not this year. I'm not going to do it. So then as far as direct seeding things right into the garden, like carrots, radishes, and my spinach options, says seed carrots, etc., into the garden first week of May or soon thereafter, making sure to cover beds with row cover if migrating birds have not yet arrived. So I don't want to have my stuff yanked out of the ground like last year. That was not good. So anyway, and then the other thing that I was thinking about was, I hadn't thought about this before because last year my greenhouse was all like I was having to still move the whole bed over and transfer the soil and then move the whole greenhouse, and I was in the middle of all that in this time period, so I couldn't plant things into it. But because the cucumbers and basil won't go out there till the beginning of May, I should have time to grow some radishes and spinach options and just, try to see how they do. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Seed into greenhouse beds no earlier than the last week of March, because these should be ready before basil and cucumbers need to be transplanted out. But anyway, that is the plan, folks. So I'm feeling much better about knowing when to start things. I think that I've got a better handle on things than I did last week. So I'm probably just going to continue to look through my videos and get more information into this little spreadsheet that I have, for, when I might want to do successions, how I want to do successions, how often I need to do that in order to get my lettuces and my spinach options and stuff like that planted on time. And what's really kind of nice, last few days, I thought it was going to snow again, but it hasn't really. We had some little bit of snow, but it's mostly been kind of raining. And so I think that I could probably get out and whenever it's like this, get some more seaweed and get it into the bins, and also maybe do some start with, fiddling with my start soil, because I need to add some fertilizer to it and get it a little bit better than I had last year, because I was bad and I used like just kelp meal and as a substitute, and that was not a good idea. It was the crappiest start soil that I've ever had. So I got to fix that, and then, maybe try and get this little nursery thing built inside the house here and do some projects like that. So we'll see how far I get. Anyway, I'll talk to you next week.